Hi, everyone. Welcome to Turning Point, Stories and Strategies from the World of Business. I'm your host, Blaine Birch, co-founder and CEO at Dryrun, and I'm really excited to have joining me today, Michèle Hecken from Michèle Hecken Executive Coaching. Thanks for joining me today, Michèle.
Well, thanks, Blaine. I'm really thrilled to be here. Thanks for inviting me to share a little bit of my story.
Yeah, well, we've met in the past. We've talked a little bit, but I know we talked about some of your story from the past, and that's what I found so engaging, so interesting, and such a terrific success story. But also some really interesting challenges and how you overcame them. So that was why I was so excited to have you on the show. Before we jump forward to even like what you're doing today, though, I'd like to sort of dive in on how you got started as an entrepreneur.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I got started pretty young as an entrepreneur. I've actually never had a job in my life other than serving, and that was on commission. So that's kind of entrepreneurial as well. I never got a salary for anything. So I'm one of those odd people who apparently can't work for anybody else. So I started my first company in 1993. Actually started in 92, but then officially incorporated in 93, 94. And the company I owned that I've now meanwhile exited from was a language translation company. Okay. And so I was living in Germany at the time. I'm half German, half Canadian, speak both languages, studied law in Germany, and decided I really liked the language aspect as well, and added on language studies there, and then found my niche in providing legal translations to large law firms globally. Okay. And when I started, actually, that's kind of a fun story. We were moving back to Canada in 93. I had one client, which was a large car manufacturing client, and I did their business translation and legal translations for them from English into German and German into English. And we decided to move to Canada, Edmonton specifically. And I think I was 23, 24 at the time. And the client didn't want to lose me. And I read this article about this translator in Australia who basically spent her day at the beach, and then at 3 o'clock when her North American clients woke up, that's when she would start working. And I'm like, wait a minute, there's an 8-hour time difference. Yeah. And there's now this brand new technology that's called a fax machine. So this is amazing. So basically I told the client, don't worry, it's better for you. Send me your translation when you leave the office for the day. That's when I get up. I will translate during the day, fax it back to you. And when you come back to the office tomorrow, voila, there's your translation. And this was at a time when, customer service in translation in particular, but, in Germany specifically was not very great. So This was still typewriter era. A lot of translators didn't even have a PC. So they do the translation and then put it in the mail. And if you're lucky, you'd get it a week later. So I had a real purple cow, really something that nobody else had. And that's how I got started.
And I'm guessing you didn't spend a lot of time at the local Edmonton beach.
I did not. I also did not spend a lot of time with local Edmonton clients. I didn't have local clients for years. And that's because my value proposition, my purple cow, the thing that nobody else could do, was in providing overnight overseas translation. That was actually my slogan at the time. Translation expertise overnight overseas, I think it was, if I remember correctly. And so I was global from day one. And basically, I would come into my office in the morning, and depending how long that uncut thermal paper roll of fax paper was, that's how much work I had today. And I don't even know how many of your listeners will even remember what that looks and felt like.
Yeah, well, you know what? I think a lot of our listeners, because they're a little more seasoned entrepreneurs, I'm guessing a lot have had to suffer through fax machine. I know I have, through fax machine and dial up and all of those, the move to HD, the move from film, all of those things.
Exactly.
was awesome, but somehow cost us a fortune every time there's a big change in business. We had to go and buy the state of the art, most expensive stuff.
Yep.
So your most like your clientele for years was overseas. How did you find that you expanded? Was it more just referral overseas, or did you actively market overseas?
It was referral from at the beginning. Um, what triggered me to market my business, just because it was so unique that I just got passed around.
Yeah.
And I had to make a choice very early on whether I was going to say no to clients or not. Just because there's only so much of me and there's only so much time. And
Yeah.
I decided very early on that I was going to scale and I was not going to say no, because I didn't want the client to go somewhere else and not come back. I was a startup. And so I trained translators and proofreaders. And first I trained the translators and I proofread and I gave them everything back for the learning and created training, proper manuals and things like that.
Yeah.
And then I trained them to do proofreading. So once that happened, I had 2 or 3 translators that were really good. My main translator got a job offer. And
no.
she called me and she said, Michèle, I really don't want to take this job. I love what I'm doing for you. I want to keep doing that. And bear in mind, all my translators were freelancers. I had nobody on payroll. And I said, wow, it's like, I really don't want you to leave. What can I do? And she said, well, if you could kind of guarantee me X amount of work, I would stay. And so we talked about it and I took a big risk and I said, okay, I think I can drum up X amount of work, and whatever I can't drum up for you, it's just going to have to come out of my pocket, but that's an investment in my business continuity. So that's what we did. And that's when I started marketing. So I started staying up late, calling my clients at like midnight, Alberta time, midnight, 1 o'clock, when they would get up. I would ask for referrals. I went to trade shows in Germany. I created packages that I mailed out at the time. Really cool packages that had like little seals on them so that the assistant wouldn't open it, and it said confidential, and it was all branded. And so it looked like a bigger company.
Yeah.
And so, I got invited. Why? Because, somebody from Canada, this is 94, 95, 96, right? They want to talk to me. And this looks like, wow, people were curious. So I got the appointment. So I was lucky.
That's there's a lot to unpack in there that I find really interesting, but like it's interesting that, because I remember going through a little bit of that as well as we grew our company, and we were going after bigger clients and bigger contracts, and you wanted to look a little bigger and a little more pro. And I'd always, find these little tactics and things that we could do that were, low cost enough, but just made us look a little more established to get that toehold. Were your freelancers, were they in Canada or were they kind of scattered all over as well?
No, they were scattered. At the beginning, yes, they were in Germany and they were in Canada and in the US and in Australia.
Okay.
And then eventually we added more languages, so that then obviously the translators were in many different countries. We had like over 40 countries represented. Eventually it could have been over 50. I don't remember exactly what the number was, but at the beginning, yeah. And then of course we were global from the start.
Yeah.
And I didn't really have any clients here. So I was kind of managing across time zones, remote from day one. I mean, that's what's interesting about the language industry is always 20 years ahead. If you want to see what's happening and what's going to happen in the world, take a look at the language industry. First with the remote working, coordinating all of those things, with technology, using machine translations, using AI. I started using machine translation or system supporting, not machine translation, but translation management systems, probably 20 years ago. Those are the foundations for AI. And if you look at what's happening, if I look at what's happening in the language industry right now, again, with AI, 20 years ahead of anybody else. So
it's I just find that amazing because my last business was office and the whole thing. This business I set up remotely right from the very beginning, and we're only, a few years older. We're not even that old. And we seem to still be kind of seen as a kind of weird, like your whole team's remote. That was until about, 10 months ago.
COVID, yeah.
Yeah. And now it's sort of norm for everybody. For us, it's like, wow, it didn't really change anything. And our team, keeps growing into more and more provinces. I think someone starting tomorrow is actually from Quebec. So we'll add another province on there. And, but for you to be able to start a remote team like that, was it 20 years ago or more?
Yeah.
Like, that's amazing. Yeah. That's just, how did you manage that when you didn't have Zoom, like, and Slack and all these? How did you tend to work it?
We didn't have any tools at the beginning. It was at the very beginning, it was fax. And then we had a printout of an Excel sheet, really. Who prints out an Excel sheet these days? But we did, because there was only one computer. I mean, we couldn't afford two computers. I needed the one computer in order to do my work. Computers were really expensive, right? Eventually we got a second one. But so we'd create these Excel sheets that would basically be our project management software, saying the translation came in at this date. It went to that translator. The translator's deadline is this. It goes to this proofreader. Where are the invoices? What are they charging? And over time, that sheet grew longer and longer and longer, because we were tracking more things, right? What's the profit margin? What's the exchange rate? What's all manual, all on paper. We used to call it our Bible. That's probably really, really politically incorrect. But what we meant by that is everything we needed to know about our business was in that printout, and pages and pages of printout, right? And then, we faxed invoices. We, one of the biggest challenges was setting up an account to get paid, right? Because there wasn't, so the German banking system, luckily I had a bank account. So what I just did is I talked to them and say, hey, can I just, rename this bank account, blah, 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 kind of a little bit under the table, and gave that, not under the table, but, kind of you have an account, let's not close it. And that's what I used to give my German clients to pay me, which was in Deutschmark still back then. It was pre-Euro. Because I didn't, so I carried the currency risk. I carried all of that because global business was only for the big players that had all the systems. It wasn't for small business. Small businesses weren't global. So I ran into a lot of challenges that, we had to be really creative, because the technology wasn't available and we didn't have the funds to create it for ourselves.
Well, and some of those things are still even a tiny bit tricky today for some businesses to move money back and forth across borders. And of course, there's rapidly new systems every day. But so if you had customers in 40, 50 countries, I'm just curious, back then, how did you actually have them pay and then have that money come to you? Like, how did that actually work?
So basically, we had them pay into our bank account in Germany. And then we had, obviously, the bank account here. And then we worked with like a currency exchange rate house. And basically, then we would wait till there was an amount of money there, and then we transferred over. And we were very early on created hedging for exchange rates, where we'd buy like $100,000, $200,000 at the beginning, maybe $10,000, $20,000 hedge for the currency, so that we could say, okay, if we buy this now, this is what our profit margin is going to be for this time until we buy a new hedge. And then if the rate went up, we might use the spot rate just to take advantage of, and we would buy hedges for what we could afford, because it gave us some kind of security on the profit margin and our profit from each job. So so then it came over through the exchange company and went into our account, and so we did.
And so they would just they could wire funds somehow from different different countries into your German account.
Well, basically the European countries would pay into our German account, and then the non-European countries would pay into either our Canadian or our US account. But
Oh,
even
okay.
setting up a US account at that point was a nightmare. It was manual, it was difficult, it was administratively heavy. It was not
Yeah.
smooth. Not that
I,
our banking system is smooth now, but
yeah, I was curious because I see the challenges that we even had when we were initially setting up. Like I remember when we first got our first Stripe account, and how honestly sort of how magical it was because, my business before we had done some e-commerce sites and things like that. And you look and go like, this stuff was challenging and difficult to build and all this. And all of a sudden, like, well, that made it easy. And, Shopify, like we still laugh
yeah,
about that. It's like, you used to be at one time going back is like, yeah, okay, you want to set up a little e-commerce, like to sell your widgets. It's going to be 30 or 40 grand to set it up. Now, was it like $19 a month or whatever it is?
yeah,
It's
yeah.
amazing how different it is. And of course we have customers across the globe. And it's funny, some of the stuff you're describing is a little bit like we actually have a US account and our funds kind of go in there and then we sit there and watch the currency and, I'm on the phone every once in a while. What do you think is going to happen? Because we want to flip it over at
Yes,
a decent time.
exactly. What do
And
you think is going to happen?
it's, yeah. So it's very sort of familiar to us too. We're just kind of sitting out and going, let's see where the dollar goes. But interesting. Some things I guess don't change that much, but
No, no.
yeah.
Yeah, we just made our peace with saying, okay, what is our margin that we need to have, and then we'd hedge it, right, and have that. And so we knew, because that stuff could drive you crazy as a business owner. You need
Oh yeah.
some kind of continuity where okay, our profit margin is going to be X% based on this exchange rate that we've locked in. And if it's better and we have a really big job that we're getting paid in, sure, we'll use the spot rate. But if you're just always trying to hedge on, like, not hedge, but like operate on the spot rate, how do you make forecasts as to where you're going to be, because you don't
Yeah.
really know what your gross margin is, and then how do you know what your net margin is?
Yeah, yeah, no, that's exactly it.
It's hard.
We fought a little bit with that on bringing in currency conversion right into Dryrun. So because we have of course companies that have multiple locations and we do automated currency conversion in that, but we have an adjustment field because
You do that, yes, you
you
have
have to be
to.
able to go like I have to at least compensate for my trading costs,
Yeah,
but I probably want to give a little padding and know where I'm going to sit. So you can type in just a number and do that. So it's just sort of the things that intrigue me with businesses now, selling globally, managing their teams globally, how it's like you were right at the front line of doing that, and now businesses everywhere are rapidly forced into remote work teams and selling in much different ways than they used to. So it's timely you kind of help set that path for everybody.
it's really funny. And now I have quite a few people approaching me saying, okay, you're doing executive coaching now. Can you work with our team to create a remote work playbook?
Yeah.
So I've had a couple of companies that have asked me, one that I'm actually working with right now. But if that's what I wanted to do, I would be so busy. It would be crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, you could be busy doing implementation probably every single day. And
Yeah.
yeah, and like I said, I feel grateful that we just sort of started this way and built it up over the last few years. And now we just tick along and our team,
Yeah.
as they come on board, it's just a little bit of training, but we already have everything in
Absolutely.
place. So, so I know one of the things that we talked about that I found really intriguing was as you grew your business, one thing that we had in common was the effect of 2008, 2009 as the recession hit and how it hit, like the way it hit our business really in the end is what led to Dryrun, because I learned the value of cash flow forecasting, cash flow management.
Yep.
I learned the value of building out an actual well-documented sales pipeline and running my business by data. And that's how we not only survive, but we start to grow again really quickly. And I know we talked about that, like there were some fundamental changes for you in that time as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And our business was kind of like an emergency room. So trying to plan a sales pipeline, which yes, we did, of course, but the forecasting was really difficult. Like even
Mhm.
with existing clients, so getting new clients is one thing, but even doing a sales forecast with the clients that we had was really difficult because
Yeah.
our business was transactional. We never, like, we could have had 100 translations come in one day, and we could have had 2 translations come in one day. And there's
Mhm.
nothing, because it was legal. It wasn't like software where okay, over the next 7 months, we're going to do this project and localize it and do everything. Ours is transactional. And
Yeah.
the job size was smaller. The margins were bigger. But when the crisis hit, Lehman Brothers was actually one of our clients, as were all the law firms, all the banks that did all the cross-border transactions globally
Mm.
between the US and different countries. And the banks weren't putting any money. Nobody was supporting the transaction. There was no trust.
Yeah.
We actually lost 2 clients because they didn't make it. Like, we didn't lose any
Yeah.
clients. We were lucky. We came out of it with all of the same clients still working with us. 2 of them stopped existing. But of course, the volume that they put through. And we
Yeah.
were small at the time. Like, we were, I think, only around 2 million or something like that. And we went from, I think, 2 million down to like 600,000
Wow.
in revenue. And so we had to basically let our entire team go,
Yeah.
almost our entire team go. And yeah, it was a really scary time, and we weren't entirely sure if we were going to make it. So I
Mhm.
sat down with my COO, and we said, okay, let's take a look. What else can we do other than try and ramp up sales? So we took our P&L and went line by line, and
Yeah.
it was kind of a weird thing to do. But I just said, okay, let's see, what does this line serve? Okay, what does it impact? And then we identified, obviously, this is an expense, but we actually said, okay, what does it drive? So we looked
Mhm.
and we found a line item that we knew went straight to the bottom line.
Yeah.
And it was a percentage line item of one of our fees. And comparatively, we were low on what we charged for that fee compared to our competitors. So
Mhm.
we did all the math, and so the focus of the exercise was to move the line items that created revenue up by 1%,
Mhm.
and the line items that were expenses, move them down by 1%. And
Mhm.
that doesn't sound like a lot, but when you do that at the
For
bottom line
everything.
at the end for everything, it makes a humongous impact. And
Yeah.
it doesn't have a big impact on the operations of your business, but that 1%, game changer.
Yeah.
So we took that one line item and basically doubled the percentage that we were charging on that one line item. And nobody cared.
Yeah.
The clients, nobody cared. Nobody cared. I mean, granted, we were already maybe a little bit lower than our competition, but we
Mhm.
didn't lose any clients. Nobody complained. And we increased our net profit by 20%. And
Wow.
that allowed us to survive.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing how um, it forces innovation and change in an organization so rapidly. And that's, of course, that's what we're seeing now, even more rapidly than even we saw back in 2009, and more dramatic, how businesses are coping with, like in Edmonton here, literally they shut down again just a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
And businesses, especially, restaurants, are one of the ones that are hit so hard already. And now it's all has to be takeout, and how they're building sort of product packages and pickup and takeout and all these things to try and generate
Definitely
revenue. And
some innovation, right? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And it's amazing how it pushes things. And in fact, it's how we've refined and pushed even Dryrun, how we've looked at our business. And I look back and go, like, 2020 is a hard year for, of course, so many businesses were on the front line of cash flow,
Right.
but boy, did it made us push and innovate, where we suddenly went, wow, like, we are going to make some big strides that I don't know if we would have without being pushed. And
Without,
yeah, I know back for our experience in 2000, I think it was around 2009, 2008 into 2009, where we were trying to figure out how to move forward. And I always look at it as I talked about the forecasts and all that stuff that we would do. And I always call that the science side.
yeah.
But what the science side did And this is the other huge component for us, was it kind of brought in the art side, where now we knew who we needed to talk to, what we needed to negotiate, where it laid out the plan. So you weren't just sort of shooting everywhere. It was kind of tying that science side of, okay, here's what we have to deal with. Here's the innovative side, where here's how we're going to shift industries, shift target markets, how we're going to price, how we're going to negotiate, all of these things that just sort of lifted up all the processes and everything in our business that had been a little bit fly by a seat of pants before. And I'm seeing that now with a lot of businesses, the way they're shifting the way they operate. And we're going to lose a lot of businesses, but a lot that come out the other side are going to be like really lean and mean and innovative.
Yeah. And maybe a lot of entrepreneurs that are going to start up something new.
Yeah,
but
true.
Right. But to your point, I love how you said the science that then it forms the foundation for the creative work. That is the art of it. Because if we hadn't done that and said, okay, and on the cost side, for example, on the expense side, it's like, okay, what does 1% look like? Okay, can we go back to our translators and even, lower their rates by 1 cent per word, right? Yeah, it's a lot. Or if that's not possible, what does it look like if we offered them, or we asked them if they would grant us 60 days versus 30, but then tie some kind of incentive to it? But those questions we could only ask because we went and looked at the science side. Yeah. If you don't have the science side, you can't ask the right questions. And I've told you this before, I wish we would have had a better system. Everything was manual. Like, I will tell you, I am not an Excel whiz. I know my business numbers, absolutely, but I can't put them together. Let's put it this way, right? So I was like, the effort it took us to even get a cash flow forecast, to get a proper budget set up, as a whatever, $1-2 million company at a time, we didn't have a budget. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's probably a lot of companies of that size that don't, but I always built our structures like it was a big company, because I found processes are easier and you can grow and scale much quicker. But that was a tough one. We talked to our accountant, like our office manager created. It took years to refine that stuff so that we could have that science to then use as creative art to grow our business, right? So I think what you guys have is great.
I think it's one of the things that I think a lot of business owners don't recognize. They think data like that will be constricting or handcuff, and it's like that's where you see opportunity. Otherwise, it's like just a gray sky. But as soon as you see those things, you can kind of go, that's where an opportunity is. That's where an opportunity is. And it can make such a massive difference. And one of the reasons that I relied a lot on spreadsheets. I still use them today for some things. They're really good at some stuff. They're also easy to break. And I'm embarrassed to share this, but I still remember, I can't remember how many years ago, but I remember looking at my spreadsheet and one of the numbers didn't work out. And of course, I was so sort of cocky about my spreadsheet that I just assumed everything was right. And I drove all the way over to my accountant's office and we sat down and I'm like, what's this? Like, what's going on? And he starts looking and I gave it to him. I don't know if I emailed or gave him a memory stick, whatever, but he went into there and then he looked at me and said, yeah, your equation's broken. And I just stood up, went, well, send me a bill, and walked out the door. And I was like driving all the way back on, like, this is one of the things that I should, how did I not double check my equation? But I got so focused on a number. And, and then later on, of course, that's one of the reasons I'm like, I should not have, first of all, I should have double checked it, but I'm also running a business here. I should not have to deal with something so ridiculous. Systems should be able to do some of this for me. And so it was also a good moment to probably give me a kick in the butt for a little bit of innovation as well. Right. So.
And the cost, I mean, I'm not good at spreadsheets at all. Like, if I have a formula in there, like I was like, don't anybody let me touch anything. Because if something goes wrong, I have no idea how to fix it. So what happens now, I'm paying my accountant to do stuff for me. and set up the Excel sheets for me, or all of that stuff, right? So it's like, and then it's still, I apologize. Somebody's calling and we'll just ignore it.
No worries. It's just, I can barely hear it, but it's just, that's
Okay.
life right now with everyone living at home. That's just how it is. So,
For sure. So having that, at least you knew how to fix it. I didn't even know how to fix it.
Yeah, it's one of those things that drives me nuts. And that's one of the things that's one of the reasons we're focusing so much on CPAs right now, because we know business owners are overworked, they're understaffed right now, and we got to figure out, okay, who can help them through this? And they shouldn't be spending hours and hours trying to get a spreadsheet to work. And CPAs are a natural fit. We just got to get them working together, and that's going to, really help them move forward. So.
Absolutely. Totally.
Yeah. So can you tell me a little bit about, like, that was a really interesting story. Actually, I was going to jump forward to what you're doing today, but no, I actually want to know how because I know you sold, Alpha Global Experts. I didn't want to get the name wrong.
I sold Alpha Translations. That was my translation company.
Okay.
So I still have another company called Alpha Global Experts, and I have Michèle Hecken Executive Coaching, which is where I'm focusing my time right now. But Alpha Translations was the company I sold 2 years ago. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And can you tell me a little bit about just your experience, like of selling a company and waking up one day going, I've spent my years on this, and now I'm on to the next thing.
Yeah, it was a pretty cool experience. I mean, I had my company for 25 years.
Wow.
I grew it. It was a multi-million-dollar company when I sold it. And what I think we did really well is we put a lot of systems in place. And I had a COO at a point in time where people thought I was nuts to have a COO, to say, why don't you do this yourself? And my answer was, because I would like my business to serve me. And what I do best is strategy, creative ideas, innovation. How can we make the brand better? How can we serve our clients better? And that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
So did that. And I was mindful, and that helped in the sales process a lot, because nothing was attached to me, really.
Yeah.
Right? The systems were there, my COO was there. And then obviously I needed 3 years of good numbers. 25 years felt like the right time. It just felt like, And with the technology and everything evolving so quickly, as I mentioned earlier, maybe we're not 20 years ahead, but for sure 5 to 10.
Yeah.
I felt like I didn't have the energy. Like, it would have been so investment heavy. And so energy investment heavy for me. Is there opportunity for growth? Absolutely. It's an amazing industry to be in. Fantastic. Yeah. I was just tired and I wanted something different. And so it was a fun experience, actually. I mean, it was stressful. Yeah. I think I probably wouldn't have ever thought that I would describe it as a fun experience in hindsight. But yeah, I basically decided I put the word out in August, and I got an offer in October. And I was very clear that I didn't want an earnout. I didn't want anything. I wanted to walk away, and I wanted just a cash only deal. And since I sold to a public company, this is, I'm free to share because that data is available. So it's not like secret or anything like that. But yes, I accepted the offer. It was like 2 days. I think it was the day before my birthday or something like that when the offer came, and the day after my birthday, nice. I think I accepted it. Yeah. And then this was early October, and we were supposed to close December 16th. Yeah. And didn't quite make that, but we closed January 16th. So basically we started due diligence in mid-October, and it was done, and I walked away. It was over, and it was crazy. It was crazy. I always thought selling a company would be like a horrible year-long crazy process. I didn't realize how smooth it actually went. And I was also lucky. I'm to this day grateful for my team in my company that supported me, that kept secrecy for as long as it needed to be kept, because of
Yeah.
course we didn't know that if the deal was going to go through or not. But just did everything and worked countless hours of extra time and overtime and still kept everything running. And because I wanted business as usual, we made decisions as if we weren't selling. I had heard from too many horror stories where people stopped doing what they were doing thinking they were going to sell, and then the deal fell through, right? Or they lacked value at the end. So still incredibly grateful to my team for that, and grateful to the acquiring company, because they were a big publicly traded company. The people I worked with were awesome. Stressful, demanding, but they walked us through.
Yeah.
And it was great. And yeah, it felt good. I had no regrets. None.
And I find the, just going back a little bit, that there's a real nugget of, I don't even want to call it gold, I want to say platinum in there, that is such an astute move by you, is what you mentioned, having a COO, because the processes and the systems in place, that is so core to the sale, that I expect not only did it make the sale easier, it brought the value of your company up, and it also let you walk away without an earnout. Like, you could walk away because everything was in place.
Right.
I just find that as, so insightful, that, and such a brilliant move. And you were, far ahead of the ones that said, why are you hiring a COO? That's why.
I was really essentially lazy, Blaine. I just didn't want to work.
Well, it's subconsciously brilliant.
My life.
Yeah. Which is, but that's also a ton of value too, is that you were astute enough to say, I want to enjoy my life and not focus on these things that I'm not good at. And that's still also really important and really insightful. So I just wanted to identify that as just a nugget of gold that will be in the back of my head for a long time. So
thank you. I appreciate that. And that's one of the reasons I started my coaching company, because that's what I'm coaching my clients on: how to lead a fun and fearless life as an entrepreneur and allow your business to serve you, no matter how big it is. There's entrepreneurs that have a business of 2, 3, 4, 500 million, and they're miserable. Right? Or they're held up and not free, even with all the capital and all of that in the company. And I don't know. I just truly believe that we have one opportunity to be here, and we should give ourselves permission to live life to the fullest, especially when, as entrepreneurs, we do have a lot of control and choices on how we decide to do that. So that's really, that's my passion into coaching. So that was kind of a pretty good transition there too.
Well, and I wholeheartly agree with that approach. And it's because, I'm not, not the first time. I've been around a little while here. The gray probably makes me look a little older than I am, I hope. That's one of the things.
Only a man would say that. A woman would never say, I hope the gray makes me look a little bit older.
I don't want to look older. I just feel like I'm not that old. It's just my.
You're saying, hopefully it's
grayer
just
faster.
Got it.
Probably misphrased it, but I'm the gray probably ages me more than it should, but I don't know. I'm stuck inside with COVID, so I might as well just let it go.
Distinguished, Blaine, distinguished.
There we go. I'll use that with my team when they make fun of my Santa Claus beard. But I over the years, I've really become more and more disciplined in trying to keep that work-life balance. And part of it was initially sort of self-preservation, because of course, like so many other entrepreneurs early on, I was burning the candle at 50 different ends. Like, you're doing way too much. And at some point you go, I can't keep that up. And I was talking with someone the other day, and we were talking about the journey of a startup. And I said, well, it's not a marathon. It's like you're walking around the globe. A marathon would be easy.
Yeah.
It's a longer journey than that. They always talk about the 10-year overnight success. It's a long journey. And, so I've tried to work that in, and a couple of things that I've found that I think over the years, that as I try and be disciplined, I do kind of a long day, and I know I probably don't take breaks or whatever, but I try and have an end at the day, and I try and separate out my weekends and take that time. And what I've realized is that I am very productive during the day. Like there's not a second spared because I'm not going all the way into the evening and I'm not working through the weekends, hyper focused. The other thing I found, and I really was a good lesson, I was very bad at taking vacation for a long time, especially, with Dryrun as we're getting off the ground. We were so tiny at the time. But I've started to try and take just like a week off in the summer or whatever. And this past summer, it was, I think, late in August when I took a week off, and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to do anything with work. My team is great. They can manage everything, good to go. And I just, tried to relax for that week. And it was right around Friday. I hadn't been thinking about it all week. And right around Friday, all of a sudden, just like magically popped in my head, this is what you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then I pull out a little piece of paper and I start kind of just sort of, 10 minutes of quickly going, okay, here's where we're at here. And also I'm like, yeah, that's what we need to do. And that has become the plan that is driving us all the way through the fall, and getting that traction. And that was because you kind of let your subconscious relax and work on it a little bit in the background.
Absolutely.
And I've had that happen numerous times. And it's a lesson that I still have to sort of convince myself, but I think it's an important one.
It's Blaine, it's critically important to be still and take the time. And I find as entrepreneurs, for me, I know that's true. And I know a lot of other entrepreneurs who have the same experience, that we're almost like on a roller coaster all the time. It's like, oh yeah, I'm going to build this business. Oh, I'm so great at this. This is what it's going to be like. Oh shit, I suck. Oh my God. Oh, we're not going to make it. The business is not going to make it. Yeah, it's not so bad. Why do I always exaggerate? And so it goes like this. Yeah. And then the energy goes like this as well. Yeah. Right. And the other thing that we do as entrepreneurs is we'll go from creative idea, effective execution. But then before we're finished executing on that, we have another creative idea. And then we try and execute on that and another creative idea. And so what would logically follow: creative idea, effective execution, satisfaction, rest. But we only get to be in that one little quadrant. So we never feel satisfied. We never feel like we deserve to rest, because we never get out of that vicious circle of creative spark and execution. And the only way we can break that is to force ourselves to rest and also realize that sometimes if we have 10 creative ideas, we either hire enough people to execute on each of them, or we got to filter down what we really want to focus on, because the shinies for entrepreneurs are like crack. They're fun. Yeah. They're super energizing. Adrenaline is up, but eventually it just comes crashing down, right? So
yeah, that's exactly it. It's such a different journey, I think, for entrepreneurs. And that's why I find it, it's so satisfying to sit down with entrepreneurs like you, and, we get to talk for a bit, and then I record it and throw it online and call it a podcast. But,
love it.
But what I do miss, and what I found I'm missing more and more every day, is that being able to go and sit down across the table from another entrepreneur over a beer and just chat. And sometimes you got a little group of entrepreneurs and you get them all at a table, and it's this, the conversations are so honest and blunt, and you find out, you're all fighting these challenges, out in sort of the public.
Not alone. You're not alone.
Exactly. And, you're always on guard with everything sort of publicly, but when you sit down with some other entrepreneurs, you're like, yeah, no, it's like some days are really hard, and some stuff didn't work, but some stuff did work. And
right.
It's just a real challenge, right?
I agree. And so what I'm doing right now with the coaching is focusing to coach entrepreneurs, mainly women. But I actually have 2 male clients as well, which is also super fun and different energy. And I love it. My mission now in what I'm doing is to democratize, good Lord, make accessible coaching for entrepreneurs, of all sizes of companies, and
Okay. Yeah.
and create a little bit of community around that, which is just in a very small group, so
Mhm.
that there's learning, and there's a support system. I have so many clients, when I talk to them, it's like, oh, this is not just me, right? And
Yeah.
there's so much to learn and improve from one, having a coach, but having that peer network, as you said,
Yeah.
talking with
Yeah.
other people, over a glass of wine or a beer, and saying, oh my gosh. And especially cross industry, there's so much to be
Mhm.
learned from people in a different industry for your own business. It's
Oh yeah.
it's just a plethora of knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of the learnings I had, when I started, I sold my last business and I was kind of hunting around and going, okay, what's the next challenge? And it eventually became Dryrun. One of the things I didn't do enough early on is I talked with other entrepreneurs, but I didn't really line up any formal advisors that would hold my feet to the fire,
Right.
and so now, number of years forward, I have advisors, I have a mentor team, and we're part of an accelerator right now, and we all these things, good things going on, but um, it's not just about surround yourself with smart people that you actually work with colleagues, and it's not just about surrounding yourself with other entrepreneurs that you can share the struggle with, all super important, but it's having someone like you that's involved, it brings a different perspective, different demands. And I know that, like the mentor group that I'm in, is VMS system out of
Mhm.
University of Alberta, um, how valuable that's been. And then separately, my advisors that serve a different role, how
Yeah.
valuable that's been. And so any entrepreneur out there, if you don't have those advisors, you don't have those mentors, I can't recommend it higher to have advisor, mentor, coach, whatever that is, to help move you forward and be a little more demanding and bring an outside perspective that's not just a chat over a beer. I think it's just so valuable.
Couldn't agree more. I truly believe that all business problems are leadership problems. All business problems are
Mhm.
leadership problems. So working on yourself as a leader and growing, and working with a mentor, a coach, an advisor, um, it's invaluable. It helps you grow your company 10 times faster than what you would be able to do it alone. And
Yeah. Yeah.
that's, kind of, maybe 10 times is an exaggeration, but definitely much, much more efficiently, much faster,
Yeah.
and getting it to where you want it to be, for sure.
And as an entrepreneur, like I never set out to be a leader at something. I didn't have any
Right.
formal training on that. When I started my first business, I didn't have any business training or knowledge. I was a domain
Right.
expert. I was a designer, and within, it felt like minutes, you're kind of like, well, now I'm a business owner. I got to figure this out. Um, and all of a sudden you wake up one day and I'm like, yeah, well, like, people look to me to lead, and our investors look to me to lead. And like, how did that happen? Like, I just sort of went, that's obviously where I'm driven to do that, but it feels a little more subconsciously, but because I didn't wake up one morning to do that.
Right.
And I think the big wake up for me was that, okay, now I actually need the people to help me evolve, because wasn't really equipped outside of the school of hard knocks. So it's,
That's what makes you a
yeah.
great entrepreneur, knowing that something else is needed to take you forward where you needed to be faster. At the end
Mhm.
of the day, coaching, or, coaching in particular, is nothing else but saying, I'm here now. This is where I want to be. And the coach's job is to help you get there
Mhm.
faster than you can do it alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the bottom line.
Yeah. It's, yeah, I so thoroughly believe in the power of that, like I said, the mentoring, coaching, advising, especially, honestly, on the mentoring and coaching side, it is different than the advisor side. And it is so fundamental. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't tap into that. And, this has been a great conversation. I'm going to take up your whole day if I'm not careful here, Michelle. But this has been really terrific, and I think it's just a really great note to end on your coaching and how valuable that is. How do people find you if they'd like to talk with you?
My website, michellehecken.com, Michelle with one L. I like being unique, but I always have to say it now because people don't spell it with one L naturally. So
We'll make sure
Michèle
your
with one
name's
L.
up there. Yeah. And we'll make sure we spell it right. I'll double check. Yeah.
MichelleHecken.com, and there's a form. Just shoot me an email and I will actually respond myself, not a robot, not an automated hand, something. You'll hear from me. And I actually do offer complimentary sessions to see if it's a fit. It's really important that it's a fit for both people. If we both
Yeah.
want to dance, then that's fantastic. There's got to be value on both sides. So yeah, for sure. That's where they
Yeah.
find me.
Terrific. And so definitely look up Michèle if you'd like to chat with her. And as always, like to remind everyone, if you are looking for some help with your cash flow management, monitoring your cash flow, modeling out scenarios, please come and see us at dryrun.com. We would love to chat with you and see if we might be a good fit for you. Thanks. Thanks so much, Michèle. This was a terrific conversation.
Appreciate it so much. And I'm very excited about your company's growth. And if there's ever anything you need, let me know.
Oh, thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Thane. Take care.